Hello, my name is Gary Elder, and this video is just going to cover the simple process of taking a scene from Unity and making a standalone build from it. And we can actually do this with a bunch of scenes if we want to, for instance, level 1, level 2, level 3 kind of thing. But I'm just going to walk through the basic steps of the process. So the first thing is, once we have a Unity project and a scene, when we're ready to make a build, we need to make sure of a couple things. One is that we have a place for the build to go. If you look into your File Explorer and you find the location of your project, inside here we've got some folders. And depending on where you're working, some people may want you to have this structured a little different, but for this example, I'm just going to make a folder in here and call it builds. And then because I may have more than one build and I don't want the files associated with that build to get confused with other builds, I'm going to make another build folder inside of this. And I'll just call this test build 1. And this will be the new resting place of our build when we're done with it. So now that we have this hierarchy inside of our project, I'm going to close this. And the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that, for example, if this is the angle I want my game, that we've actually set up my game camera. You can see here my game camera doesn't line up. So a little trick that you can do is, if you like the scene angle, you can select the main camera and then in the game view do Control-Shift-F, and that actually lines the two cameras up. And then we need to make sure that we've set up the game aspect ratio so that it doesn't change on us, so that it's not based on the scale of this window, it's based on some other resolution that we've planned for. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, we need to make sure that this is what we're about to build, and we need to make sure that our build has a name. Because it's possible to make multiple kinds of scenes or even sub-projects from one Unity project, we need to make sure we've established the name for this build before we create it. And the easiest way to do that is to come up to Edit, Project Settings, and inside this window that pops up under Player, the very top here, we can create a product name. And I'll just call this test build 1, and we can even leave a version number if we'd like, and we can give it our company name and icons and some other things. I'm just going to leave it as is for now, since this isn't a video about anything other than just the build process. And this is now going to be the name of the build that shows up inside our folder. Now that that's set, I'll close this window and I'm going to come to File, Build Settings. And right here at the top you'll see we've got scenes in build, and this is where we need to make sure that one or more scenes exist that we can open up for our runnable. If we don't have anything in here, we're not going to get anything in here. So I currently have one scene, my sample scene, and I'm just going to say add open scenes, and here you'll see that it's been added and it's given it an index. If we have more than one scene in here, we'll get more than one index, and we can call those by name or by index number depending on how we want to do it. The other thing is I'm going to make this for PC Mac standalone, so I'm going to leave it on the default setting, target platform Windows, and all the rest of this is going to be fine. When I'm ready, hit build. We need to tell it where it's going to go. We created a folder, test build 1. This is where I want my build to be placed, so I will say select folder, and at first it looks like nothing's happening, but then you'll see it gets going and we have to just wait for the process. Okay, and now that it's done, you can see we're still inside of our test build 1 folder, and it has created us a standalone runnable. Right here we've got the executable. It took the name that I gave it in the project settings, and it's also got a build data folder. If you ever need to rename this exe for some reason, make sure that you rename the data folder to match test build 1. Make sure _data follows whatever this name here is. These other names usually are just left alone, and that's why we want to separate our build folders so these don't overwrite each other. Alright, one last thing. I always recommend trying to open and run your build before you give it to anybody. Make sure that it actually works. If you haven't configured it with a way to quit, You can always open it windowed. This will give us a little X that we can close, or Alt F4 will usually close it as well. So I'm going to hit play. We'll run it. We'll make sure that our build looks the way we expected it to, and if it does, awesome. Okay, that's about it for this video. Hope that was helpful, and thanks for taking the time to watch it.